Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Premiere Pro, where you'll learn everything you need to know to go from a 100% beginner to a professional level video editor. We'll release at least one new tutorial every week, and if there's anything you'd like to see covered in the future, let me know in the comments. Okay, everybody. So first of all, shout out to all the new followers and subscribers. You know, the channel's growing very slowly, but it is growing, and we're getting close to 100. And when we hit 100, we might have to do some kind of special or something, or let me know what you'd like me to do for 100 subscribers. So leave that in the comments. So, all right, in volume 15, part 1, we were going over how to pick out some B-roll, where to put it and why, how to show and designate with these colors, what's going to be covered and what's going to be on camera, so you have a really good visual representation. And we said, you know what, for the content that we chose, for the sound bites we chose, we don't have a lot of our own B-roll to cover this that makes sense, because B-roll is all about making sense with what your subject or your interviewee is saying. So we said, you know, we have a little bit of stuff that we picked out here that's kind of good general B-roll. And then we also, to save time, I went ahead before this video and just picked out some of the drone footage that we shot. And we determined that, okay, we're going to need to find a little stock footage. So we've done that. And this is stock footage that's going to serve to kind of cover the things he said about the family and kind of the flashbacks that we don't have footage for. And we said, hey, in part 2, we're going to show you how to really put that together. And then I looked at the notes for the episode, and 16 was supposed to show you how to do that. So, yeah. So this volume 16 will serve as part 2 for 15. And we're going to try to stay away from the fractional parts because
ain't nobody got time for that.
That's right. So we're going to get right to it. Basically, we're going to start to really build this into an edit now. So you guys have been through all kind of the fundamental stuff, and now it's time to really start having fun and putting together some more complex edits. And this, once we get done with this lesson, this is really the first point where we can say, you know what, if you have a client that wants to hire you to put together like a short video, a mini documentary, something like that, you now from these tutorials have those skills to put that together and to edit professionally. So let's dive right in here. So we're just going to go soundbite by soundbite. And hey, I know which ones are B-roll because they are color coded. So let's just listen to what he says, and then we're going to pick out something that's going to match.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young. Okay. So brother, young, baseball. So we need to find the stock footage, and this is going to be for later on. And I'll get into why we chose these as well. But we have some stock footage of some of the kids playing baseball. Find it. It's when you're looking for footage, it's literally always the last footage you see. All right, so we have kid playing here. So let's select a little piece there. And what we're going to want to do, we kind of select it, and then we want to listen again and really listen for what we selected that's going to match. So I'm going to do an endpoint here. Catching the baseball, rolling on the ground, good out point there. Going to drag that. And again, I like to drag it just to the end of the timeline just so it's easily accessible. And it's already kind of been through a bit of a screening process of, okay, this is some of the cream of the crop that we think is going to work for what we're doing. So let's see, what else do we have here? So we have another kid playing baseball, kind of throwing and swinging. Okay, that's pretty cool. So we'll do an endpoint there, get the swing. And also, you got to remember, like, there's context to these. So he's talking about being 4 or 5 years old. You don't want to show a kid that's like 18, right? Because that's not going to make sense. So we need someone around that age that could have been him. Let's see, we have a couple more. So this is 2 kids with dad. So also, when he talks about it, he says me and my brother. So you need to have that context of like, okay, it's him and his brother as kids. That's going to make this make a lot more sense. It wouldn't make sense to show like a boy and a girl or something, because that's clearly not what he's talking about. And then we have another one here. Okay, cool. So catching, throwing. So this could easily, and he talks about his family life and his parents. So easily that could be him and his brother with dad. So that is a really cool, nice basis to cover that. And then I'll show you how we're actually going to make this a little more interesting too, and show that this is not now. Okay, so if you look here, and a lot of times it's good, just kind of look at what you just selected and see, does this make sense? Okay, so kid diving to the ground, kid swinging, 2 kids walking, kids and dad. Now, he did mention T-ball. We didn't actually find one that had actual specific T-ball. It is good to show the bat swinging. Now, this is something you have to be careful for in stock footage, right? So that's one person, one model. Those are different people. They're clearly not the same people. So one thing we can do is we can blur this a little bit and make it look like it could have been one of these kids here. We can do some stuff with the color. So we don't want it to look like we just went and got random stock footage clips, because that's where your audience loses it, because you lose your suspension of disbelief. So let's line this up, and then at the end, once our clips are lined up, we're going to go back and see what we can do to them to just make them fit the tone and match a lot better. So I'm going to play this again now, knowing the clips we just selected.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
Okay. So what we want to do, playing with the brother. So that's the first thing we want to do. So we want to get something that shows that. So we have diving. Okay. That. So throwing. So maybe like the two of them right there, because you're seeing the kid and his brother. So we want to select that. And let's just kind of try to line it up and make it make sense of what he's saying. And when your B-roll like perfectly matches what they're saying, that's when this all really comes to life. So let's take a look.
And started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old. And
okay, so right there, not bad. And again, he's talking about the brother, but clearly when you're that age, you're going to, there's usually an adult around that's helping you, bringing you to the park. So the kids with the dad makes perfect sense.
And started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got.
Okay, great. So got into T-ball. The closest thing we were able to find was a regular baseball. But the good thing is, if you look at the way this shot, and by the way, I also like to move this to the end of the timeline, because when I move it over, I'm not going to accidentally use that shot again, because it's no longer there in the pool. So work smarter, not harder. So what's good about the way this is framed, with a little adjustment, you could almost kind of Jedi mind trick your audience into thinking he's hitting off of a tee, because there's not a lot framed below where the swing is. So we're probably going to line that up, and we're going to do our best to kind of make it look like it could have been T-ball. So let's drag that over to where he talks about T-ball.
Old and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
Okay, so started up really, really young. So again, we have here is our 2 clips that are left from that pool. So we kind of could use that. He's talking about just me, right? So maybe just seeing him there is good. So why don't we do that? And let's see if it covers. Now, remember we talked a little bit about pacing. We left this in here on purpose because we don't want to just jump to the next soundbite. We want to have a little spacing and a little breathing room. And maybe that's a good place for the shot of the kids and the father walking. So let's see how this all looks together.
Game, and started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young, like 4 or 5 years old. So
I'm just gonna, I want to start that sooner.
Like 4 or 5 years old.
So as soon as he says years old, and I also, if you see this little mark here, that means that's the absolute first frame of the clip. And if you can avoid it, you want to try not to ever do that, because what that's going to do is when you go to do a transition, it's pulling from both sides of the clip. And if you're at the last frame, they're just not going to balance out right, and you may not get the desired look or transition you're going for. So I'm actually going to just collapse this a little bit. And you can see on the left there how many frames I'm going back. So let's do like 20, just so, because I'm feeling already there's going to be a transition, and I want to have enough frames to complete that transition. So
5 years old. So started up really, really young.
So right when he says started up young, that makes perfect sense.
Young.
And then this is where we're letting it breathe. So maybe right there is when we go to the kids and dad. And as you can see, because I pull them over, that's our last in that pool of potential B-roll. And that's actually a nice transitional shot, because it's like, it could be that they're on their way, but it also could be that they're done. So we showed a sequence, and then, oh, we're on the way home. Let's take a look and see how that looks. So let's take a look at the whole sequence, actually.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
Okay.
I've been really, really young.
And I'm thinking that you can use a transition. So maybe let's give it it's a little time that's passed. So I always say when you're doing a transition, you should be able to explain the reason you did every single transition. We want to show the passage of time. So usually some type of dissolve is a good way to do that. And a lot of times just a simple cross dissolve. So let's see what that looks like. See that? So now we are telling a story and not just throwing clips in the timeline. So now let's see how all of that looks.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
Okay. And remember, this feels very empty when he stops talking because it's still what we like to call naked.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
All right. It means that you haven't fully dressed your edit up, right? So there's no graphics here. There's no music. All those things that pace it and make it breathe. It'll feel really weird when you're just cutting this content. As an editor, you have to learn to look through different goggles. So right now, the only thing in the world I'm looking at is what is he saying and does this match? You can get really ahead of yourself and you can chase your tail trying to do certain things and saying, oh, let me put some music in there and let me do this and let me do that. But then what happens when you see the totality of your edit, you go, well, that doesn't match anymore. So now I have to do it again. So you start doubling work. So one of the reasons, and our production company, one of the things that people hire us for is we do very quick turn editing. And the reason we do quick turn, it's this process. So think of it as you're building a house. You build the foundation first, and then you build the walls, and then you build the second floor, and then you put the roof on, and then you build everything else. If you do that, imagine building the roof of a house first. Well, that's not going to work, right? So think of editing as the same thing. When we timed out, and this is what is commonly called the shell in television when you edit, the first thing we did was we picked what are the sound bites and generally how do we want to space them out. You have to do that first because everything else is getting built on that foundation of how you assign and space out those sound bites. Your walls are maybe the B-roll, right? And you can't figure out the B-roll until you have the foundation, right? Or you're going to build walls on no foundation. So, and it's a funny analogy, but it's really true. If you start trying to cut B-roll and cut music and do this stuff before you do this, I guarantee you will have to do it again. And what could be a 2-hour edit could turn into a 2-day edit. So as we get more through these series and you're starting to see already, the process and the order of operations that you choose will make all the difference. So that was a very important point that you need to understand. And that's why we do these things in this order. So let's continue. So I kind of like how this is looking so far. And you can see it has kind of a feel to it. It's already getting a rhythm to it because he's talking about different moments and we're hitting them as he's going. And it's starting to turn into an edit.
When I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
So that's going to be filled in with things we'll do later.
I've been very blessed to have a family that's so supportive.
Now that's great. This is perfect because he's talking about his family. So a little trailing. So this is another thing that traps editors too. Cutting every clip right on the word or right on the thing. So instead of saying, the B-roll sequence stopped there, so I'm going to cut it right there and I'm going to cut to the next clip right there. Well, that's not very fluid. Trailing video over the next thing that he says that can lead into something else, that gives your edit so much more of an organic feel. And believe me, that's going to elevate and make your editing feel much higher end. So I'm going to leave that just like that. And I'm going to find another family clip right after that.
I've been very blessed to have a family that's so supportive. My brother played in college and he was close to home, so we got to go watch his games all the time. And growing up, we were always at the ballpark all the time. So it was.
Oh, and before we move on to that, I actually lied. So this is great. We actually do have still pictures we found of T-ball. So that lesson I think I said about going through all your stuff before you edit. Yeah, so we want to go ahead. So if you look here, we have an image. Now, what I'm going to do now is place this image. And I didn't need to add the entire sequence. So flip. There we go. So for whatever reason, it's wanting this to be long, so that's fine. We'll collapse it. I'm just going to add some of that when he says T-ball.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball.
Okay, so here we go. You'll do this in your edit sometimes too. You'll put something in place and then you'll realize, oh, you know what? I have something better for that. And then do it. You know, this isn't written in stone. This is called editing for that reason. That's literally what you're doing. So try things out. And also don't be afraid to try something thinking that you're going to be stuck with it. Try it out, see how it looks, see how it feels. And if you don't like it, switch it. If you do like it, maybe enhance it, you know, or do more of that. So it's never done until it's done. It's done when you hit export. So try things out, because when you experiment, you'll find things that you maybe wouldn't have initially thought of conceptually, but because you tried things out and saw them, you go, you know what, I kind of like that. And then you'll take that in a future edit. So I already know we might want to do some kind of this motion. So now it worked before, but look at how much better this is going to look now.
And then started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old.
So that's pretty cool. So let's actually start about here. And if you look in some of our previous lessons, we talk about keyframing. We're going to go to position, and then let's go to the end, and we go back one frame to get that last frame. And then we are just going to keyframe this up a little bit to focus on the T, because he's talking about T-ball. And then just like that, this makes a lot more sense and gives it a little movement too.
And got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
And you know what? He talks about him and his brother. So I believe we have another. That's kind of cool too. But we have to be careful. So this looks like, first of all, the age 3 or 4, that's perfect. And this really looks like this could probably be like, oh, younger version of him and his brother. Like even this here, right? That could be a younger version of those same kids. So that's how we're going to really make this feel real and not like we just got some random B-roll and photos and made something in like 2 seconds. Because believe me, your clients will not like that. For whatever reason, it does want to make these longer, even though I'm giving it in and out. So, and you can just collapse that. So let's just listen again for where it makes sense. Maybe we split it up over this time.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
So let's switch to the T-ball 4 or 5 years old, that line. And we'll add this image here, and we can scale it up. And then we'll have to, now I'm doing this to cover so we don't have like a blank spot because this is a small image. So I went up last time. Maybe let's go down this time, right? So let's maybe start here. We'll hit position and always make sure that that clip you want is highlighted so you have the correct effects controls. If I do this, this is something that happens to editors a lot. You can have the wrong clip highlighted and you start doing all this keyframing. And you go, where is it? Where is it? And it's in this clip. So make sure you have the correct clip highlighted. Very important. That we call a pro tip. Maybe I need a graphic and a sound effect. That'll be a new thing we do. But there you go. Pro tip. So let's go to, let's make that clip the correct length. And what I'll do, I'm going to want this to switch. So now I can just highlight that clip. I can press Alt, press down, move it down.
Like 4 or 5 years old. So,
okay. And let's up a little bit right there. It's a short clip, so if I do too much, it's going to move too fast.
Like 4 or 5 years old.
That's still kind of fast, right? So let's get a little closer. I don't want to change the end point, start point.
Like 4 or 5 years old. So started.
Okay, that's better. So then we're improving our edit already by doing something that makes a little bit more sense. So let's look at that.
Started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
Cool.
Brother probably was 3 really young.
All right, and that slow motion is nice. So
I've been very blessed. So started up really, really young.
Okay, good. So now we're going to lead into family. So we have to look here again. Okay, so we have a family there. And again, we need to choose people that look like they could have possibly been him and his brother. And we're talking about the support of a family. So it's as according to Storyplex, it's a good looking, happy, smiling, carefree family. So I guess that'll work. slow-mo. So that looks really nice. And again, we're going to get this stuff placed in time, but I'm going to show you what we're going to do to make this feel a little more like this isn't now. And also, again, you don't want to see faces too clearly when you're doing stock footage that's supposed to be someone that you actually have in the video. So we'll show you how we're going to do that. So let's just see what that looks like.
I've been very blessed to have a family that's so supportive. You know, my brother played in college, and he was close to home, so we got to go watch his games all the time.
Right. So
Have a family
supportive.
that's so supportive. You know, my brother played in. You know, my
Brother played in college. So that's a change. So a lot of times when they're transitioning their thought or transitioning the theme, that's a good time to do a video transition. Because you say, when do I cut? When do I do a transition? Well, he's going from one idea. So he's saying supportive family to my brother played in college. That's a transition of like our thought process. So that's a good point to transition the, like do a video transition. So we need to find the footage now of someone in college playing baseball in college. And we had a couple clips. So this is very, remember I said, like, if we don't really have these people, we want it to look like it could have plausibly been them. So, oh, that is nice and blurred, right? That could be anybody. So let's, and then we have a sequence here. So let's, those are two different fields. So we don't want to mix it. So we want to choose one or the other. So let's choose this one because that looks like could be a college player on their field. They're not fancy stadiums usually. They're usually like fields that are maybe slightly above like what you see at a high school. We have a nice swing. And but that is like perfectly what we need that could plausibly be. We could make a case in court that that's his brother.
supportive. You know, my brother played in college, and he was close to home, so we got to go watch his games all the time. And you know, my brother played in college, and he was close to home, so we got to.
So we got to see his games all the time. So we really want some footage of maybe like a game type of scenario. We found something in like a stadium. There we go. This totally looks like a college baseball game. And here's a very important point. So the first footage we showed, whether you're a baseball fan or not, this guy's a right-handed hitter. We can't show a right-handed hitter and then a left-handed hitter back to back. So we actually really need to find, I think that's our only kind of college looking. So maybe this might actually be, because again, we got to think thematically. What makes sense, right? Maybe this covers the whole thing. So if you really look here, they're standing on opposite sides of the plate, right? So if you're looking at the batter's box, he's on the right side. If you're on the right side of the batter's box, you're a left-handed hitter. If you're on the left side of the batter's box, you are a right-handed hitter. So these are two different, so it can't be the same person. It's impossible. So what we're going to do, this also fulfills our, and again, I said, okay, you know what? I like that, but guess what? I found something that I think is going to work better. So we're going to make sure that this really matches properly. So this checks all the boxes. This literally looks like a college type of stadium or field. It's not, you know, it's much better than high school, but it's nowhere near major league. So this really could have been someone in college. You can't see him that well, so this almost could be anyone in the world. And we're saying we get to see him. You're from the perspective of a fan. So you'll see how all of that really matches what he's saying. So let's pick a clip there, kind of as he's stepping up to the batter box. We got to see him play all the time. Let's cover that, and let's see what we have here. So we are just going to get rid of that.
You know, my brother played in college, and he was close to home, so we got to go watch his games all the time. And growing up, we were always at the ballpark all the time. So it was every level I've played.
And then growing up, we were always at the ballpark. So I think he just means ballparks in general.
We got to go watch his games all the time. And growing up, we were games all the time. And
growing up would be a good point. And I have to look. I don't know if we, you know, okay, so we may not have a stock footage clip specifically of like a more professional looking ballpark. But remember, we did shoot their ballpark. And actually, this could be really cool. Okay, we have a Chipper Jones clip. A little bit later, he talks about Chipper Jones and they like the Braves and going to the ballpark. So maybe a nice shot where we can kind of see the ballpark would serve well, right? Maybe seeing some fans. Let's see what we have here. Just kind of scrubbing through this longer clip. There we go. That's a ballpark.
Podsednik comes up ready to throw.
So that can serve for going to the ballpark all the time. So let's see how that looks.
Games all the time, and growing up, we were always at.
That's a super low res clip, so we're going to scale that up. And you know what? Here's a good thing about this. In documentaries, people understand that you have legacy footage, so you kind of get away with lower res. So don't worry about that being lower res. This is really just for context.
Games all the time, and growing up, we were always at the ballpark all the time. So it was
okay, cool. So that clip is cool, but I would actually like to find something that maybe shows fans. Oh, they're fans.
Ball is out of here.
And the reason we're doing that is because they're talking about them being at the ballpark. So I want to show fans
Let's
at the
got a
ballpark.
chance. The ball is out of here.
Okay, so, and you know, the rounding the bases, you see fans too. That's a little steadier of a shot. Maybe we let it cut. So sometimes if you're editing something that has a cut in it, you can use that cut. So let's see.
Ball is out of here. Ball is out of here.
All right, so I'm going to go back a little bit. Take an endpoint.
The ball is out of here.
And remember, we're not using the sound. So that right there looks like a nice little sequence. So let's see. Going to the ballpark all the time. So you want to remember the key phrase that they're saying.
his games all the time, and growing up, we were always at the ballpark all.
Okay. I'm going to scale that up.
All the time. So it was every level I've played.
And remember, we did our color coding. So guess what? I know we're taking them on camera. So we're going to end it there. So let's just look at what we have so far.
I was born into a family that loved baseball. I had an older brother, older sister, 4 and 2 years older than me. So as soon as I was born, I was around the game and started playing with my brother probably when I was 3 or 4 years old, and got into T-ball like 4 or 5 years old. So started up really, really young.
Okay, so that's just.
I've been very blessed to have a family that's so supportive.
So we're telling a story
played
now.
in college, and he was close to home, so we got to go watch his games all the time. And growing up, we were always at the ballpark all the time. So it was every level I've played at, my family's been right there with me. They'll be out here in a couple weeks to watch me play, so they really enjoy baseball and love watching me do what I love.
So we are eons ahead because now we're telling a story. It's not just random sound clips. You can feel it's coming to life. So let's just keep rolling and listen to the next one. And I think what I actually may do, I'm going to skip ahead a little because we don't want it to get too long. I'm just going to place, I will tell you why I did them, but I'm just going to go ahead and place it for these last three, and then I'll pick it up there and I'll tell you why I placed them, just so we don't make this a 2-hour video and have to do a part 16.5 divided by 19.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Okay, so we're back. And as you can see now here, I've kind of placed all the B-roll around. It would have just taken too long, but you know how to select B-roll. So I'm just going to go through and tell you why I chose what I chose of the things that you have not yet seen. So we're going to start at the beginning. Remember in the first part of this video, or 15 part 1,
Ain't nobody got time for that.
we said we're going to want to pace it with something to establish a story and with some music. So this is more what it's going to look like. We're going to establish the city, establish the park.
My name is Matt Pierpont. I'm a relief pitcher for the Hartford Yard Goats.
A little bit of him pitching. And then we're going to dip to black into his interview.
Born into a family.
Because we're showing kind of some pacing here.
That loved baseball. I had an older brother, older sister, 4 and 2 years older than me. So as soon as I was born,
and we've seen this part, and we know why. So now we're going to go over to. Now we had some stock footage of a baseball player. So the idea is he's talking about playing in college and switching to pitching. So we want to show something that focuses on pitching, but we also want something that could look like a younger version of him, right? And this is this cool, like ESPN sports stock, you know, black background, serious, dramatic kind of thing. So this really works here. So let's take a look at that.
Fall in love watching me do what I love. After my junior year, I started pitching only and focusing on that, and been doing that ever since.
So you see how that makes perfect sense. We're seeing his transition into being from a general baseball player to specifically a pitcher. And again, now we're telling a story. So again, this edit is still a little bit naked.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
But that just means we're still going to fill in music and graphics that are going to make this not, because right now this feels a little abrupt, right?
Let me do what I love. After,
but we may add a transition, we may add music, we may add graphics that are going to make that more of a smooth transition. So again, put your goggles on. All we're doing right this second is making sure the B-roll matches. Once we do that, that's the next level where we start to put it all together and smooth it out and polish it up. So let's look at our next soundbite and B-roll section.
Here today, he really taught me a lot. He played minor league baseball for a long time and really taught me, got me headed in the right direction and got my foot in the door. And
so he's talking about his coach. So this should be someone that looks like they're coaching college kids. The coach himself in college might be a little younger. So the very important point to make here is these are stock footage clips that we chose, but it's of the same model. And we're going to some different shots that look like they all match together. So what this does is this really makes it plausibly, again, we can argue in court that maybe we could have shot this and this is kind of our B-roll sequence that we cut from that. If you showed 3 different models in 3 different stadiums and 3 different jerseys, just not going to look right and you're going to take your audience out of the edit. So all these details are important. Let's go to our next section. So this is a interstitial portion that we needed to just cover with some B-roll. So let's take a look at that. And when you're doing interstitial, you want to look at what they said before and after to make sure it makes sense.
Luckily, I've had a lot of great coaches since then to, help just me keep getting better.
Okay, so now here's the point. All this before, I just pointed my finger at the screen like you can see my finger in the room. All this before this is the history, right? This is what led up to where I am now. Now we're kind of getting to where he is now. So this is where we can start to show the stuff that we shot that makes sense in his current career. And also, these are great points for music changes because you're moving the story along and you want to give it a new energy and you want it to feel different than before. So we're going to kind of make a note mentally here that this interstitial part here where we transition from before the past to now, that's a great spot for a music change. So let's look at that.
Just me keep getting better.
Because getting better and getting to where he is now.
Chipper Jones always been my favorite player, I think.
So now he's talking about Chipper Jones' favorite player. So we pulled some old Braves footage. And here's the point, guys. Okay, I get it. 16:9 HD. That's the world we live in. But he's talking about something that happened in the early 1990s. And in the early 1990s, believe it or not, this is what broadcast television looked like. So it's okay because this is a historical reference. We don't have to pretend that there was HD then. We don't have to pretend it was 16:9. Let it be 4:3 and let it be what it was. Now, one thing you can do here, though, if you want to aesthetically fill this without distorting it, you can duplicate your layer. And I'll just show you that now because it's something that's pretty easy to do. This is something you will always see almost in like local news or like certain ESPN when they look back. If you duplicate the layer, so you can press and hold the Alt and lift it up, and like magic, you have 2 of them now. So the lower layer, the one that's under, and we didn't really need to do that in preview. I just happened to double click it. But the lower layer here, you're going to go to Effects Controls. You can scale it up, right? And now you're going to start to see, and actually what I have to do first, because technically this isn't transparent. This is black. So I'm not going to see what's under there, right? But I've actually started scaling up the video under. So if I go there, scale that up to fill. Okay. So now that same video is under there. So I'll make that visible again. Here, I just have to key out that black so I can see what's under it. So I go to Effects and Color Key. Once you hit the K, it'll know what you mean. I drag it on there. I'm going to choose the color I want. And Premiere gets weird. Sometimes you can push it. Sometimes you have to like push and hold it. So I'm pushing and holding it. And it gets a little weird. Okay, so we chose the black there. Now that it's keying that color out, and I'm not seeing what's under there yet because I haven't set my tolerance. So I have to set the tolerance here, and that might be too much, right? So we want it just where it cuts the black out. So right about there. Okay, so 23. You're just going to have to experiment with this. Now what I want to do, so you can see because you duplicated, these clips are in sync. Now what you want to do is you want to go to blur, and I just like Gaussian blur. That's kind of the one that kind of works for me, but there's a ton of them in there. Remember your lower clip. Remember, always make sure the correct clip is highlighted or you won't realize what you're modifying. Then you're just going to turn this up and see if it could listen. There you go. So we're just going to blur that a little, and how much you blur it, it's really personal preference. I like to do it enough that it's not hard edges, something like that. So now what you've done, you've kind of made it a little more aesthetically pleasing than the black bars, but you're preserving the original aspect ratio. So here's a way, now we want to do these to all these clips, right? So here's a way you can do this really quickly, and it's going to save you a lot of time. Remember, order of operations. You're going to highlight all the rest of them, press and hold Alt, pull them up. You've duplicated them all. Now, remember this? We did our color key to get rid of the black bars. We're going to copy. And this is where these workflows get powerful. You start doing more complex edits like this. You're going to highlight all of these, right click, paste attributes, and you're going to do color key. You don't want motion. You're going to do color key because they're already at the scale we want. Hit OK. And now look. Okay, you can't see yet because there's nothing under there. But here's what we'll do. We'll take the bottom layer, which is the one that's blurred and enlarged. You're going to go to copy, highlight all of these bottom layers. And now here's where the magic happens. Like MTV Cribs or something.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
All right. You're going to paste attributes and think, what did we do to this? So we scaled this up and we blurred it. Check motion because it was unchecked. Hit OK. And look at that. Like magic, we applied all the effects. Everything's in sync because it was the same clip. We are seeing a little artifact here with the black. It's not horrible, but you know what? We could get in there and adjust our color tolerance. So let's just go to the key is actually on the top layer. And let's maybe try like 30. Get rid of a little bit more of that black. Try 40. Now 400. Okay. So you see how that tolerance is just saying how much it's going to key it. So it kind of took care of it. And let's just do 35 because I saw it break into the image a little bit. A little bit's okay because, again, this is vintage. We know it's vintage. No one thinks this is new. So we can go to our other ones and do... I'm going to just quickly do it manually. But you could also copy and paste, but then you have to take out the old ones. So this one's not too bad. We're just going to make them all 35. You can see some of the different clips are reacting differently. So this one, maybe I will try 40. It's a little weird. So here's another thing we can do. Some of them don't want to cooperate, right? So here's what we can do. Our good old Frank Gaussian blur there. We can bring it down to that top layer. That one's not too bad, so I don't think we need to do that one. But these last two didn't want to cooperate. So, and actually, you know what? Instead of blurring the image, this is actually going to be better. You can feather the edge of the effect. So in our color key that we're in, that's what got rid of the black bars. You can thin the edge a little, right? But that broke into the image. We don't want to do that. We can feather the edge. Just makes it a little more aesthetically pleasing, and it gets rid of that hard edge. So let's do that. That's a little nicer. And now our other ones look hard, so we'll just feather. And that's built into that effect, so that's probably the best way to do that. A little softer. So we very quickly took something and we did elevate it, but again, we're not pretending it's 16:9. We know it's not 16:9. We know it's not current, but this looks a lot better now.
Chipper Jones always been my favorite player. I think,
and it looks historical. It looks like we're looking into the past.
I always wanted to do everything that he wanted to do. So, growing up, you know, the Braves were on TBS a lot growing up, so was able to watch a lot of their games, and you know, I played shortstop.
Okay, so all you people out there that want to be news editors or edit for television, this is going to be like a bread and butter technique. So, make sure you like save this video, save this time code, because this is going to be how you make. As a news or TV editor, you get all kind of stuff thrown at you and they're like, make it look good. And you're on at 5. This is how you're going to do some of that. Okay, so that was pretty cool. So again, now this looks more like a produced documentary, and you'll see a lot of ESPN documentaries because they're doing a lot of the same things where they're thematically talking about the past. A lot of them during flashback.
Chipper Jones always
stuff
been
just
my
like
favorite
this.
player. I think my brother, it was his favorite player first, and I always wanted to do everything that he wanted to do. So
we took a few not too hard steps and we made that look a lot better. So let's look at our final sequences of B-roll here.
Long time.
So what we want to do now is this is a big energy push. A lot of times when you watch pieces, they'll kind of ramp up at the end. They'll do more epic looking shots. They'll ramp the music up. And that's how you tell your audience. These are all subconscious ways that we know that things are coming to a conclusion and ending. So we wanted some really epic looking shots, and we want something that we can surge some really nice music under and make it just feel really big and really final. So that's why we chose these shots. So this is the whole park, some of the drone footage that we did.
It's a crazy atmosphere here. The fans are into the games from the start to the finish, and it makes it a lot of fun to come to the ballpark and, you know, and do what we love.
Okay, great. So he's talking about the fans, so we chose some shots.
It's a crazy atmosphere here. The fans are into the games from the start to the finish. And
we also kind of cut on his words there, if you notice the pacing. So crazy atmosphere here, and then when he says fans, right on fans, we cut.
It's a crazy atmosphere here. The fans are into the games from the start to
finish.
Start to the finish.
So that's where we want to do that, because that paces it with what he's saying, and it makes it feel like it matches.
It's a crazy atmosphere here.
We had a little lag there. And by the way, this whole timeline isn't rendered. It's a pretty powerful system, so I usually don't have to render, but if you're having lags like that, render your timeline. And if you see the red, this will render just by hitting enter. If you see the yellow, you need to go to render entire work area. And once you do that, it'll play back smoother. So I get away with it because we have a pretty powerful system, but if you're having a lot of lag, just render and you're going to not pull your hair out. Let's look at that sequence one more time.
Crazy atmosphere here. The fans are into the games from the start to the finish, and it makes it a lot of fun to come to the ballpark and, you know, and do what we love.
And he's talking about coming to the ballpark and doing what we love. So we want to see him in the ballpark doing what he loves, which is to pitch. So we chose that. And that's got a nice soundbite that kind of wraps our short story up. And then what we want to do is we want to find a nice closing shot. The music will go up, graphics will come in. So we end on a closing shot of the ballpark. And that's a very nice shot to end on. We can fade it. We can go to a graphic. We can do a lot of creative stuff there. So we really have done what we call, we've covered our edit now. There's no holes. There's no black spots. There's no areas that we have designated that are going to be covered with B-roll that have nothing. So we now have, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't prepare this, but I have to go to the right part of my Roadcaster here. We have now assembled the edit. Okay, that's enough of that. So we've assembled our edit. So the assembly is the first time that your edit is ready to watch. Doesn't even mean present to the client. It means from start to finish, you don't have any glaring black holes, which would be just nothing, right? Or you don't have any areas that need to be covered that are uncovered. You have a watchable edit. That is what's called an assembly. Once we have an assembly, the next step is to polish the edit, change any pacing, select some music, start to think about the graphics. And that's when we start to get it where it becomes ready to start to present to clients or to other editors or whoever else we may be working with. So that's a good point to start here. This one got a little long again, but you know, now we're getting into more complex editing. So it's going to be more of a process to get through this. So in part 17, we're going to go over just those things we said, how to start to polish this up and how to start to really turn this into a presentable edit. For more Premiere Pro tutorials, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and make sure to ring the notification bell. And as soon as the next volume is uploaded, you'll find the link in the description.